Hello, everyone. It is the Sunday show.
What's up?
Show. The filler show.
The filler show. I'm
show.
Kevin.
I'm Will.
And this is It Resolves, a Magic the Gathering podcast where we just talk about fun stuff.
Yeah.
Whatever we decide to talk about, which happens to be Magic most of the time.
100% of the time.
You can count on that. So, we thought we've already on our Friday show we went over our new schedule, but I think we'll go over it again just to get it out there.
Once more.
So Will, talk us through.
So, our schedule, as you know, Sunday today is going to be the filler show. The show where if we think there's something interesting or cool that we want to talk about or that gets us going.
Sorry.
You right there, bud?
Thought I had to sneeze there. We're good.
I look over. I'm working hard. I'm powering through my fake script here.
Your
I look
fake
over.
script.
I see Kevin making these odd demon-possessed
It's all
faces.
good, man. We're good.
Plowing right along. Whatever the heck that was. Monday. Monday's Deck Tech Day. We'll start the week off with something new for you to consider. We will bring decks pretty much from anywhere.
Yeah, this can go one of two ways, I think. So, first way, we each sort of agree upon a deck and just sort of highlight just that deck.
Kevin and I agree a lot, but when
We do agree a lot, but when we don't, it gets hectic, and it will come up. There will be something we disagree on.
I can't wait.
It's going to be great. So, we'll highlight one deck probably some of the time, and then in addition, what we might do is, say, pick a format, whether it's modern, whether it's standard, vintage, whatever. And we each sort of pick a deck from that, and we say what we like about it, what we think it could use to make it better, maybe things like that. So we'll sort of play it as by ear as we go along and see how that goes. But that's the plan for Monday, I believe.
Of course. Thursday is Kiss Table Format Day.
Casual,
fun, dear.
just the formats that don't get the coverage that they deserve.
Don't
right?
get the spotlights they deserve.
The popper
You're right.
formats, the commanders, all those fun formats that most of us love.
Are there more than popper and commander? Are there some we're forgetting? Does
I mean,
Frontier
actual
count?
Casual, Frontier, maybe we'll throw that in there.
I mean, it's a turtle format technically, but it doesn't have.
I mean, it doesn't have a huge following yet.
Not yet. It's
So that
not-
may be something we talk about. But I think generally just the casual stuff, right? Like the fun
Yeah.
stuff, what we decide, we want to talk about it that day, basically.
Sure. And Friday is our standard / limited day. If we learn anything new about the limited scene, limited pretty much gets fleshed out within the first few weeks.
Usually so. Yeah.
But standard is a little different. We're gonna talk about that a lot more and the changes there, changes in meta, things that come up because it is a changing environment.
It is. It's an ever-changing environment for sure, especially with the new bands and things like that. So,
Even if it might not seem like it.
well, and to that point, also with the standard and the limited day, we will be streaming and posting that content up on YouTube. We've been streaming, just practicing and getting Twitch all set up.
We want to, we like things to be at least decent quality before we throw it out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we want to do the best we can and make it something hopefully you guys enjoy. I know we've enjoyed just making this content already, and this is only the 4th episode. So,
Are we already at 4?
yeah, this is the 4th.
Look at that.
It's awesome.
We're
So,
almost big kids.
we don't have a stream schedule or anything like that, but we will be sending out stuff either via Twitter.
I love it. Via Twitter. Follow me on the tweets. On the tweeters.
This is the episode of Kevin messes things up. No, so we will post things on Twitter and on Facebook, letting you guys know usually an hour, maybe 30 minutes in advance. Hey, we're going to be up there on Twitch. So
follow us if you want to hang out. Just
absolutely
draft and play some decks. And,
you can make fun of us. You
should make fun. We deserve it.
We kind of do most of the time.
Listen, Magic World, we've gotten through 4 podcasts, getting to say whatever we want.
You guys need to hold us accountable.
No
for
one's
this.
called us on our stupidity.
Yeah, which is very, very prevalent. It's everywhere.
I expect more out of you.
Anyway, that is the schedule. Again, we'll post that and it'll be available for everybody to look at.
Yes.
But just keep that in mind. In between those days will be recording days, so that'll be a lot of fun. I think we're gonna start off with my favorite named segment that we've come up with. Are we ready for this?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so this segment is featuring a combo that we either found or we already knew about but just really enjoyed. The name?
We named it after probably one of the most prolific combo pieces in Magic history.
Yeah.
This is what we call the Kiki Weekly.
The Kiki Weekly, as it suggests, it is a weekly segment.
Once a week during the... What are we on? Sunday show.
Sunday show.
It's probably going to... Might switch over to Monday. Might be...
Maybe. We'll see.
I don't know. Who knows?
I think it fits pretty well on Sunday, so we may try and stick it there, but we'll see what it goes, where it ends up, and especially time-wise as we get through this. So, but this is where we highlight just a cool combo, and it doesn't necessarily have to be one that people know or don't know. It can just be a fun combo that we found, and this one I think a lot of people do know of.
Yes, I did not actually, to be fair. Kevin showed this to me, but I was watching him play a game
just
online.
A casual modern game, basically.
Yeah, just fun, and this came up, and I had no idea what it was. Kevin, do you want to go right into it?
Absolutely. So, for any of you that may already know, it's the Devoted Druid and Quill Spike combo.
It's pretty cool.
It's a very cool combo. So, Devoted Druid, for anybody that doesn't know, is a 0/2 for 1 and a green. You can tap it to add 1 green to your mana pool. You can also put a -1/-1 counter on Devoted Druid to untap it.
Okay.
So, starting point there. Quill Spike is 2 and either a swamp or a forest.
It's a hybrid.
It's a hybrid. For a 1/1 creature beast. Excuse me. You can also pay either a swamp or a forest to remove a -1/-1 counter from a creature you control, and Quill Spike gets +3/+3 until end of turn.
I see.
So there's an infinite combo here.
Yes.
Is what it amounts to. You tap Devoted Druid, you get the green mana. You also can put a -1/-1 counter. I keep saying this very badly. To untap Devoted Druid, basically you can keep throwing +3/+3 on Quill Spike, right? Endlessly is the idea. So you can get an infinitely large Quill Spike, which is great. Kevin, it's a very cool combo.
Kevin, my friend.
Yeah.
Question: how soon can I look to get this out there?
It depends.
Okay.
Generally, you're looking at a turn 3 combo. You can get it out on turn 2 if you really ramp, and depending on what format you're in, there's a lot of other ways to do it. But generally, you see this in Modern, which turn 3 is where you could get the combo out. Turn 4 is where you can really utilize it, though, right? You're not going to be able to attack in with the Quill Spike the turn you play it. So it's a bit of a slow combo, right? And it's very dependent on you being able to get that damage in. There are other ways around it. You can use cards that say deal, X damage to target player, where X is target creature's power, something like that.
You could fling it.
So there are ways that you can make this happen without having to swing in. But it does get broken up fairly easily to creature removal, which is a problem, right? It just could be broken up pretty easily.
I mean, as soon as Quill Spike comes on board, you could see someone bolt it.
Absolutely.
That
is key. Especially in Modern, Bolt is an ever-present source, as well as Path to Exile, things like that.
Yeah.
So
it dies to a lot. There has to be kind of that line of like a test,
Sure.
Will this kill this thing?
Yeah.
Will this stop this thing?
Yeah.
And Wizards will probably never get rid of that.
I think so.
There's got to be something in every format.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but we just thought we'd highlight this combo. This will be a weekly thing, but we really like it. Very cool.
It is cool.
There are some decks that run this and just sort of a fun thing.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a competitive, viable strategy, but maybe you can make it work.
I'm sure
come up with some deck lists.
I'm sure it's won a bunch of games, but
I'm sure it has. But it's a cool combo. I really like it. So that is this week's Kiki Weekly. Fantastic. A good wrap up.
Thanks, Kevin.
To that. It started off pretty rocky, but we got there.
Listen, I learned some things, so I appreciate. That's what it's about.
That's what it's about.
All right, cool. So main topic today, man. This is an interesting one.
It is.
So I was, trolling the internet. Not trolling, troweling maybe. What's the word? I was perusing the ether, and I was just looking at some top 8s, from standard, from vintage. I didn't realize actually that there was a vintage event that happened a little while ago.
There was. It was the Swedish Vintage Nationals 2017.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty
very
cool. So it got me thinking as I'm looking at the standard top 8s, vintage top 8s. We can kind of talk about, do a little compare and contrast section.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a great idea.
Vintage is a fun format. It probably... it's got the oldest player base, you could say.
Yeah,
Definitely.
vintage is the format that has everything, right? Like
Exactly.
literally, the card pool is every card
From alpha and up.
Yeah, so it's the most sort of diverse format if you think of it in that way. That doesn't necessarily mean the top tier decks are the most diverse, but in general, you get access to everything, so you can make anything. It's a really cool format.
It is like you need to be an experienced player in almost every aspect of the game to do well.
It is extraordinarily complicated.
Right. We'll talk about that actually.
Yeah.
So we'll just go into it. How I thought we wanted to set this up. What made the most sense to me. We talked a little bit about the formats, what makes them good, pros and cons to each, why people play them, and then just kind of talk about the state as it is. So I was going to give Kevin the floor to talk a little bit about vintage.
Sure. Well, as we already touched on, it has the biggest card pool. That's one of the biggest draws for me, I know. Because you can make anything you want. You can play Devoted Druid Quill Spike in Vintage. Not a good idea. I do not recommend that. But you absolutely could. And, it's really cool because you do get those diverse decks. And occasionally you'll get, sort of, maybe not a tier 1 vintage deck, but a good vintage deck that does something that you just haven't seen before. So it is really cool. It is very complicated to play. You really have to be on top of your game because the interactions that happen, there are a lot of free spells, quote unquote.
Yep.
Things like Force of Will, Mental Misstep, things like that you don't actually have to leave up mana for. And so you really do have to play around those. Blue being notoriously the best color in Magic, gets played a lot in Vintage.
Pretty much in every deck list that I've seen has at least a blue card.
In a lot of them, for sure. And it's just the most interactive color, and this is a very interactive format. And so you're going to see a lot of that. And you have to plan for it. You have to plan around it. You have to, when you do make plays, you have to say, is this worth fighting over? Or do I need to bait? Do I need to do things like that? So not necessarily a format for those players who are just sort of getting into Magic,
right.
Or for those players who just don't know the older cards very well, because a lot of the older cards are highlighted in Vintage, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
But that being said, there are some really cool things that happen in Vintage. It's a really great, really cool combos that come out. A lot of the combos that, you don't always get to see in other formats. Commander's is the place where it's the combo format, right?
Yeah.
But it's not in Commander. You get some of those really oddball combos that you don't get, anywhere else. They just don't work.
You don't realize
right.
happen.
But in Vintage, they're very fleshed out. They're very strong, very, very quick. You can very easily win in no time at all with Vintage. So it's a very cool format. Definitely a complicated one. Not recommended for new players, but very cool. And I would suggest, there are some videos on YouTube of some Vintage tournaments.
Yeah.
I would definitely recommend checking them out.
If you're really into Magic, if you're a Magic fan and you want to see some top tier gameplay, what's the channel that runs the Vintage tournaments? It's Fireball, right?
Vintage Super League is really the most notable on YouTube, and you really get to see some very cool interactions. Randy Bueller, LSV is sometimes in it. Eric Froelich, a lot of those players who are the big names, right? Like they've been around for a long time. Chris Bakula is one of my favorite players.
Shout out to Chris Bakula.
He's great. So he's usually there. Definitely worth a look if you're interested.
Yeah.
But again, I would say proceed with caution.
It is so interesting to me to watch some of the games because sometimes turns take forever.
Yes.
And nothing happens. And that's just the player thinking about every single line that could possibly come up.
And that's the thing. Normally when you play, sort of one of the newer formats, we'll take Standard as an example.
Yes.
Because we are comparing it to Standard today. There's a few lines you can take in Standard usually. With the cards in your hand, you have your deck and you have the cards and you say, okay, these are my options. which one do I proceed with. And I'm not
Right.
saying it's always clear cut, which is
Sure. Yeah.
the best play. But generally, it's between a couple of plays that say, yeah, this is what I need to do.
There's usually in your hand the best option's clear.
Usually. Yeah, we might get blasted a bit for that, but I do think it's a little more clear than in Vintage, where you have no clue what your opponent could have, because they could have a Force of Will and just counter anything that you play. So if you're playing your big bomb card, if they just Force of Will it and you don't have anything to fight it over, you just lose, right? Like, those things happen. And so when you're considering your plays and your lines in Vintage, you really have to consider all the options, and not just what you have, but what the opponent has, which is more important there than probably any other format. I would say. So,
do you want to go into pros and cons for Vintage, or do you think?
I think that kind of covers it. For the most part.
Yeah, I would agree.
Why don't you tell us about Standard?
Standard
and comparison.
Everyone's least favorite format. Standard is the most widely played format in Magic. It is the F&M powerhouse. It's what you will usually see in comic shops. Being played, I'll say, for the most part. Standard is a rotating set of cards, basically. You get, and I say set, I know there are sets, but I mean there are from X set to Y set, and that's all you can play with in Standard.
Right.
And every time they add the newest set, eventually things will rotate out.
Yeah.
Like we will lose Zendikar and Battle for Zendikar in September.
I believe that's correct. Right.
Yeah. So those cards will no longer be viable, and that will shake up the meta. A little bit, right? So some pros and cons to Standard. I wrote down a few here. Like I said, it's widely played. You will usually never hurt for a group to go play Standard with if you're looking for that. If you're looking for community and someone to go in and say, I want to go to an F&M, will you come with me? It's Standard. Usually everyone's got a Standard deck.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
If they're into Magic and they keep up with Magic at all. It's a predictable meta, right? Because it's the most widely played, most of the strategies are fleshed out within a few weeks.
Yeah, I would say so. And it also has, because it is a limited card pool, you don't have as many options to play different things.
True. Yeah, also true. Which can be taken as a pro or a con.
Yeah, absolutely, depending on how you look at it.
Now, with it being a predictable meta, there are things that people find that work better in some instances than others. We'll go and talk about that when I talk about the most dominant deck in Standard right now. And it constantly changes, right? So every year you get things that rotate out of Standard. So you have to update your strategies or your deck will be stagnant.
Yeah.
And, you'll just die out. And it is usually the cheapest format to start playing in. Cheapest competitive format, I'll say. That's not Pauper or Commander or what have you. That being said, it is starting off the cons list. As soon as things rotate out, those cards' prices really drop and plummet. Usually because in each set, there's 1, 2, maybe 3 or 4 cards that you can play outside of Standard that people gravitate to say, I'm going to put this in my Modern deck. I think I have a plan to work with this. There's not always things that will go out there. So you might be holding your and this is kind of a bad example, but Voice of Resurgence. When that was in Standard, it was at times $80, $90, $100.
It was a great card.
It's still a great card.
It still is a great card.
And then, but when it rotated out of Standard,
it dropped
$40, $50, $60.
And then with the new reprint in Modern Masters, it went down even more.
It dropped again. Still a great card. I love it. Voice is fantastic. But yeah, the price drop was there.
Yeah.
So you feel like sometimes you lose a little bit of your investment if you look at it that way. But it is usually the cheapest format to buy into, right? Your top tier decks might run you $300 to $400, depending.
Yeah.
Like how dominant it is.
I do want to point out also, as a comparison in Vintage is by a very long way, is
almost absurdly.
Oh, it is absurd. I mean, you can get into the thousands for decks easily.
Into the tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands if you get, Power 9 cards, stuff like that. So Vintage, by comparison, is definitely the most expensive. So just something to note there, I would say.
So little comparisons there. So let's talk about those Grand Prix.
Yeah. So I took a look at the Vintage Nationals.
Okay. I guess that's not a Grand Prix, is it?
No, but it is a really cool. It was an interesting tournament, I would say. And
why is that?
Well, so I'm gonna pick the top 3 decks.
Cool.
That won first, second, and third.
Cool.
Talk about those. I do want to note what was really cool to see with this was most of the decks that were in the top 8 were not the same deck. And so what I mean by that is I believe the most prominent was a Mentor deck. For those of you who don't know Monastery Mentor, which we will talk about.
The second episode, I think?
I believe so, and we'll talk about it more here as it was in the top 3. But there were 3 different Mentor decks, 2 of which were Jeskai Mentor. One was an Esper Mentor. And so you get some variance even in the strategy, like the specific decks. And so but the rest of the decks, I think there might have been 2 Punishing Oath decks and things like that. But there was some variance, right? Like you get to see a lot of different decks, and I think that's really cool. By comparison, I would say Standard is a little stale in that way.
We will talk about that.
But I think what was really cool is Dredge won.
Yeah, Dredge pulled it out.
Which that might be a bit of a touchy subject because I know a lot of people don't like Dredge. They feel like it's too much a game of sideboard hate, things like that.
Oh, yeah.
Which I understand, right? Like, I get.
Yeah, there's defense to that argument, I'd say.
I'd say so. Generally, with Dredge, you win game 1 most of the time. If they don't have any hate, you just win. And for those of you who don't know, Dredge is a mechanic that says anytime you draw a card, you can instead pull a card with Dredge from your graveyard, put it into your hand, and then discard from the top of your deck however many cards equal that Dredge cost. So, for instance, if it was Dredge 3, instead of drawing a card, you pull that Dredge 3 card from your graveyard, put it in your hand, put the top 3 cards of your deck into your graveyard. And as most of us know, in a deck like this, you kind of want things in your graveyard, right? Like, that's the point. And it does a very good job of doing that. One of the best dredgers it is the best dredger in the game is Golgari Grave Troll.
One of my favorites.
It was banned in Modern recently, which sort of nerfed Dredge in Modern. There's actually still variants that are going around that are good with Prized Amalgam and things like that. Still somewhat viable. I don't think it's tier 1 anymore, but it's still very good. And Golgari Grave Troll has the highest dredge, which is Dredge 6. And so what you're able to do is sort of keep on dredging as you do this.
Keep on dredging.
You know, you have your draw at the beginning of the turn.
Wizards, put that on a shirt.
Keep on dredging. I like it. You have your dredge at the beginning of the turn, or your draw at the beginning of the turn, in which you can instead dredge using Grave Troll or Life from the Loom. There's a ton of different dredgers that they use. Get a bunch of cards in the graveyard, repeatedly do this, and then you just get creatures back for free. One of the biggest cards that sort of makes this deck tick is Bridge from Below, which if it's in your graveyard, anytime a creature gets put into your graveyard on top of Bridge from Below, you get a 2/2 zombie instantly. So
it's very strong.
A very, very strong card. There's also things like Bloodghast, some very aggro creatures. Narcomoeba is just a 1/1, but you get it for free if it goes into your graveyard from your deck. There's a lot of very cool cards that just kind of happen in Dredge. Like you can't do much about it. Like you just get them. And so you really end up it's a very aggro deck. You just sort of swing out with all these creatures. You don't really care if they die because if they do, they come back. And so really the reason that this is so good is it just outpaces everything.
Very quickly. I do want to just throw in there's also a manaless Dredge deck.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
When I heard about that, my mind kind of did a backflip.
It is, it's a very cool deck.
What do you mean it runs no lands?
That might actually be a deck we highlight because it is a very cool deck, and that might be a Monday episode or something where we do a deck tech. But it is very cool. That variant runs no lands. I believe this one runs 14.
Which is so low.
It is low, but I should say in Vintage, generally your land count is a lot lower anyway. You're not looking to cast like hard cast anything too large, right? Like
Okay.
there are different decks, specifically a workshops deck where you do cast sort of bigger things, these big artifacts, but you have lands that help you get there without actually needing tons of them.
Okay.
Things like Ancient Tomb, which gets you for 2, life, but you get 2 mana out of it. Yeah. And so you ramp in that way. And so you don't actually need as many lands in Vintage, but it is still pretty low.
Okay.
And it's just great. Some things to note, though, with this Dredge deck. 2 cards really caught my eye. One was Dragonlord Colligan.
Yes.
Which is just interesting, right? Like, it's just a cool inclusion. Very interesting. I'm still a little wavy on it. I don't know if I would take up a slot for it. But it seems really cool. I just wanted to throw that one out there. Not a huge deal. But the other one I thought was really cool is Elish Norn.
Yes, Elish Norn is awesome.
Which Will and I sat down and talked about this for a bit, and we boiled this down to a metagame call, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, you
No, you're fine. As I stated earlier, 3 of the top 8 decks were Mentor decks.
Yes.
For those of you who don't know, Elish Norn gives all of your opponent's creatures -2/-2. And that just happens as soon as they enter the battlefield. That's a constant effect. And so it just kills Mentor. And all of the tokens. So,
which is so smart. I don't know why I didn't see Elish Norn in more of these deck
Well,
lists.
when we first saw it, we were like, "What? That doesn't make sense."
Yeah, that's
but then
not in Dredge.
we realized, okay, actually, this is amazing.
That's so genius.
And so I think, honestly, that won him some games against the Mentor decks. It had to have. I have to imagine that it did.
Yes.
So a very cool first place deck with Dredge, I think.
Numero uno.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
very cool. So
awesome.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about one of your decks, or do you want me to go through my list?
Here's the thing, Kevin.
Okay.
I would love to talk about my top 3 decks.
Okay. But they're all the same.
How about you talk about your next 2 decks?
I can do that. All right.
And
So
we're going to harp on Standard for a little bit.
That's fine. That's fine. So, pulling up second place was a Punishing Oath deck. It seemed to be fairly standard when I looked through the list.
Yeah.
A little bit of interaction. 2 main combos.
Okay. Talk to me.
The first of which, Punishing Oath, is the deck name. Punishing Fire with Grove of the Burn Willows is an infinite 2 damage combo, basically, where you get in every turn, or even more than that, 4 damage. Okay. And it's just a recurring combo. You can just get that going. And it's very cool. It's a very simple combo. You see it a lot in this deck. Nothing too crazy, too special there, but it is very cool. The other combo that I just really happen to like is it's Forbidden Orchard with Oath of Druids. That's where the oath in the name comes from. Forbidden Orchard is a land that you can tap to produce any color, but you give your opponent a 1/1 Flying Spirit token.
What?
Which
you give them things?
Yeah, terrible, right? Well, no. So Oath of Druids is a card that says at the beginning of your upkeep, if an opponent, and this you can actually, the opponent can use this ability too. So keep that in mind. It can backfire, but generally it doesn't, right? Like
because you plan to have.
Yeah, you plan to use this in the most positive way possible, and so you use your Forbidden Orchard.
Yeah.
Tap it and another land to play Oath of Druids, which is 1 colorless and 1 green. And it's an enchantment that says if on your upkeep your opponent controls more creatures than you do, you can search your deck, pull a creature, and put it onto the battlefield.
It doesn't even have to be in your hand.
Doesn't have to be in your hand. It can be just in your deck. So obviously the creature of choice, with no hesitation at all, is Emrakul.
Of course.
The original, not the new.
The 15/15.
Yes.
Annihilator what?
I don't know. It's something ridiculous.
35.
Annihilator 68, clearly. Very good. You get an extra turn after it comes into the battlefield. It's just amazing. You can get this out as early as like turn 2, right? Like
it's so strong.
So good. So good. So
man.
Very cool, but pretty standard Punishing Oath deck. Pulled up the number 2 slot.
Yep.
The last slot and our third place was a Mentor deck. It was Jeskai Mentor, which I do think is the right Mentor deck to play. The other was Esper. Esper was running Cabal Therapy, which, for those of you who don't know, basically it's a discard card from their hand. You get to pull some cards. It's very cool, but the Jeskai list gets access to one Dak Faden, which is the big payoff card, especially in Vintage, because there are so many artifacts, all of the power, the Moxes, the Black Loot, things like that. You can just steal them with Dak.
Which seems pretty good.
Seems pretty good, right? Like, you want that. So the Jeskai list is probably the one I would play. You also get Sudden Shock, which is good because it has Split Second, which means you just end the stack. So if they go to counter something, you can counter it, and then Sudden Shock, and then they can't do anything. So very cool. Jeskai Monastery Mentor is a card that is a 2/2 for 3, 2 and a white. With prowess.
Okay.
Anytime you play a non-creature spell, you get a 1/1 creature with prowess also. And so what you really do with this is turn all of your instants and sorceries, of which there are many, because it is at heart a control deck.
True.
You turn them all into value and creatures at the same time. So it's like you just get awesome stuff.
Yeah, it's
all
sweet.
the time. If you stick a mentor, you get a few tokens out of it, you're gonna win. Right, like there's no doubt. It's a cool deck. It's a great deck, and obviously it was metagamed for by the Dredger, and it was the most prevalent. And it's just something that is really fun to play because Mentor just feels so good when you get to play it.
It really does.
It's so great. We play it in Cube, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
So
it's off. Well, sometimes the first pick. I won't say
always, not always, but a lot of the times it is. It's a very, very good value creature.
It's super fun.
So, that rounded out the top 3 of the top 8 for the Vintage Nationals.
So all really different. Really unique.
Very different, diverse decks, a lot of cool interaction.
Why are
On the other hand...
why are we using so many synonyms for different and diverse?
I don't know.
We're saying all these words. Oh, I have here in my notes. We're talking about Standard next.
Oh.
All right, Standard.
We got some beef with Standard right now.
It's still fun.
It's still fun.
For 32% of the players in Standard, those 32% of the players are playing Mardu vehicles. I go into it sounding really negative. I do feel like Standard is not as dead a format as it might seem right now.
Sure.
I'll go into why in a little bit. But we're talking about GP, I'm going to butcher the name and I'm so sorry, but Grand Prix Shizuoka?
It's my favorite.
Shizuoka?
I don't know.
I am so sorry, anyone who just heard me say that wrong.
All the people.
So anyway, this GP it's not the most recent to happen, but when I wrote these notes, I hadn't looked at the Atlanta Open yet.
Right.
So I might be pleasantly surprised. I could be completely wrong in what we're about to say, and that's totally fine with me. It is okay if I'm wrong right now. But yes, so in the top 8, 6 of the top 8 decks were all Mardu. 4 of them had the name Mardu Vehicles. The other 2 had Mardu Ballista. However, their deck lists didn't really change.
I believe the only difference was a few of them were running more ballistas, right? Like, that was kind of it.
Yes. And the thing with Ballista is everybody runs Ballista.
Right. It goes in every deck, and it's amazing.
It is amazing. It's great.
It's a great card.
It's one of those that, well, slide about a Ballista. It's strong, but it's not, like, in my opinion, bannable too strong.
No, I don't think so.
It's just a great, like, I'm going to play Ballista and get out of the sticky situation.
Yeah, I do think Ballista is one of those cards, though, that is going to hold some value. The reason I say that is it's actually being played in other formats already.
Yes.
It's impacted Legacy Food Chain, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's true.
You just win with it. It's pretty great.
It's great.
Infinite damage, really. So, very cool, very cool. But
right. Okay, so...
Go ahead.
Yes. So... It was hard when we thought about we were going to do this episode to talk about the top 3 best decks in Standard in this GP because they were all Mardu, which was a little depressing. But then that opened up a few more options for us when we were talking about Standard. So I wanted to talk a little bit about just the state of Standard. What I said before about 32% of players playing Mardu vehicles, that's true. 32% of players in all the GPs are playing Mardu vehicles. That's the deck to beat, right? In years past, in Modern and Legacy GPs, it was Jund was the deck to beat.
Jund, Birthing Pod?
Death Shadow a while ago.
Death Shadow.
Birthing Pod.
Splinter Twin.
Yeah. Just
things like that.
These decks that might call to mind for somebody some really bad memories or some really good ones. But it's caused a lot of polarization, especially with the only deck that seemed to beat it getting banned out of Standard.
Which was what, Will?
That's the copycat deck, buddy. The pseudo Splinter Twin Infinite Guys combo.
Yes. Which I don't think we'll try not to go on too much of a
yeah,
rant
we don't
about
want
this.
to. There's so much that's already been said about it.
Yeah.
And people already feel so strongly about it. My heart goes out to you.
For those who don't know, Fellar Guardian, which was the ever important piece of the combo, was emergency banned. Which, yeah, it took out the deck. And so, before, a few weeks ago when it was not banned, generally what we saw from our research was Mardu vehicles and Copycat, right? Like those were the two decks.
And a pretty hefty little disagreement between the two, or competition, I should say.
Sure. Now it seems, at least, that with Copycat gone,
yes,
Mardu seems to be taking over.
Yeah, and it has. So I wanted to talk a little bit about why, just to kind of give you a picture of Standard. Some things, Kevin, you may not know about.
Oh.
I don't. Maybe do. Maybe don't.
I don't know.
So I wanted to talk about a little bit about Mardu's strengths because it is such a strong deck, but it doesn't outright seem to be super powerful, right? It doesn't play a crazy big bomb, right? Its strongest creature is Avacyn, like just power toughness ranked right there. It runs Gideon, right? It runs the new Chandra. It runs stuff like that. Some even run the Saheeli.
Very cool.
Interesting. I'm not sure why. So they get fun planeswalkers. They get big creatures, but it doesn't what makes it tick really. So it's honestly consistency and value in its little guys.
Yeah.
So it works off 1-drops that make themselves bigger with artifacts right off the bat. So common turn 1 play is Thraben Inspector. It's a great card. It goes everywhere. Gets you a clue token, which is an artifact. Turn 2, you can drop as many as 2, now 3/3 creatures because you've got an artifact.
Which seems pretty good.
In Standard, you could say so.
You could say that, yeah.
All this is complemented by the vehicles aspect.
Right.
Heart of Kirin and the ship.
Unimaginably great cards.
Yeah, these fantastic threats that just happen upon your board and win you the game. They're insane. Heart of Kirin is turned on not only by creature's power, but it can be turned on by a single loyalty counter from a planeswalker.
Which is amazing.
Yes.
Right? Like
it's
that's
a 4/4
just
for
so
2
broken.
in the air.
Yeah.
It's insane. So what happens there is you don't really have anything to throw at them in terms of I take out this guy and suddenly the board is flipped. Because their power is everywhere spread out. They're just so tough. Scrap Heap Scrounger, no matter what you throw at that guy, he keeps coming back. Right? He's a 3/2 that says for, I think it's 3 black mana, or 2 colorless, 1 black mana, exile target creature in your graveyard, Scrap Heap returns to the battlefield.
Which is awesome.
It's great.
Recursion is always great, and especially for a deck like this where you kind of want just as much power as you can get, right? Like, if it dies, that's fine, let's get it back.
Yeah. He can. He can't block, but he'll just swing every time, and it's fine. You will probably lose a guy to it, but he'll just come right back in your face.
Yeah,
it's great. They honestly, one of the strongest cards in this deck is Unlicensed Disintegration. It's probably one of the best removals in Standard right now, excluding Fatal Push. If we take Fatal Push out of the argument, Unlicensed is probably the strongest. Reason being, especially in this deck, it gets all of its power if you control an artifact. So for 3 mana, you can destroy target player's creature or artifact. And if you control an artifact, it deals 3 damage to that player.
Which is perfect for this deck, because you're going to have the artifacts.
Yeah.
So you're always going to get the hit on this.
Exactly. And you want the removal to get rid of their guy. The 3 damage is just a bonus. But in such an aggro deck, it's icing on the cake. And it works so well. We've already harped on Scrap Heap, how he keeps coming back. He's in your face. It is a tough deck to beat. It is a tough deck to beat game 1. The decks that do beat it game 1, I don't want to say super consistently, but have the best chance, things like Black-Green Delirium. That's pretty strong.
Yeah.
Teamer does a pretty good job of beating it game 1. But then Mardu has this great sideboard that they just switch out, and the deck becomes almost a tempo control-y, I'm going to set out my Planeswalkers.
So really what you're getting here, or what you're saying is, you get an aggro deck game 1, but if you want, you have the option to make an almost entirely different deck game 2. And so you get both halves of it. You're able to sort of play based on the deck that you're against, right?
Yes, you get a lot of flexibility, which is tough.
Yeah.
That's tough to play around. There are some decks that do it. And I wanted to talk about Black-Green Delirium a little bit more because it is in my opinion, the best contender to do that. And I'll talk a little bit about why. So Black-Green Delirium works, of course, off of getting different card types into your graveyard to do various things. But that is not actually the strength on how it beats Mardu. It's really just value between interactions between Nissa and a card called Winding Constrictor and stuff like that. So
both of which are great cards.
Yeah, one great way the reason I'm talking about these two specifically, one great way that it beats Mardu is it spreads out that value, kind of in the same way that Mardu does. So Nissa creates some plant tokens, you get out maybe a Grimflayer or 2 for 2 mana, you just try to put threats on your board that can sustain themselves, right? And then with Winding Constrictor, Nissa's plus or -2 ability, you put a +1/+1 counter on each of your creatures, is doubled with Winding Constrictor. So your board gets instantaneously bigger than most of their creatures.
Correct.
Right? So their biggest creatures, the ship, Heart of Kirin, those are threats, sure, but their main body of work all ends at toughness 3, power 3, excluding Walking Ballista, which is,
scalable.
A variable, yes. So instantly your board is bigger, right? So you can win combat, your threats are greater, you're running Fatal Push, so you can knock things out of the game that would, keep your combat off. Fatal Push, by the way, does still hit Heart of Kirin, which is great.
Yes.
But why aren't people playing that? Why aren't people playing the Black-Green Delirium decks? You took a breath. Do you have a thought?
Well, so my thought is it may not be consistent enough in racing.
That is exactly it.
Is that...
You're right there.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just unfortunately not consistent enough.
Because it ends, from what it sounds, again, I'm not the standard expert, as it's been stated before.
That's fine.
Kind of hate standard. But
to quote Kevin from a last episode, I've never played a Magic format I didn't love. Maybe I said that, but you agreed.
I did agree. But I've also never officially played standard.
That's true.
So my thought process on this is when it works, it works well.
It does. It's true.
It's true. But it ends in a race, right? Like you're racing to get to your creatures and make them bigger than the Mardu vehicles, which just I couldn't imagine happens enough.
It happens, but usually it's too late.
Yeah. And that's what I mean.
They are able to get, if they hit all their land drops, they can just flood the board with guys. They play the red lady for 3 that gets you a Thopter. What's her name? Nissa's mommy. We're going to call her Nissa's mommy.
PNLR.
Thank you. Yes. That's such a hard name to remember. I'm sorry. All right. Yes. PNLR. That's a 2 for the price of 1. Veteran Motorist, a 3/1 that gets you to scry 2.
Yeah.
So you can just look for more threats on board. And it's a 3/1. Like, that's crazy. You don't care if that dies. Its max value is already on board. It hits. So no, it's just not consistent enough. Delirium is strong. You get the Graph Widow that puts out the little 1/1 things. So you can flood the board, but Mardu just has so many more options right now.
Yeah.
So in taking that, I was talking to a guy just today about why they won't ban things out of Mardu. And the simple answer is nothing is strong enough to ban it. Mardu just works well in synergy, and there's no card that is breaking the format.
Right.
Like we saw the cat do.
Yeah.
Right. Because the cat combo is easy to stop.
Right, but if it goes off, you do just lose.
There is no getting back.
Right.
Right? You could, in theory, race against Mardu and still beat it, even if it's ahead.
Right.
In theory. You'd have to get some great top decks. You'd have to pilot exceptionally well.
And like you said, there's not a single card in it, a specific card, that if you ban this, it's going to make the deck, tremendously worse. It's just you removed a few slots from the deck.
Right. Case in point, Smuggler's Copter.
Correct.
Fantastic card. Super strong. Banned it. Marty was disappeared a little bit. It kind of hid behind the copycat decks. And then they banned the copycat decks. And boom, there's Marty again.
Yeah, exactly.
It just found a way to make itself still relevant, which is insane.
Yeah.
So, takeaways from that, main things to talk about Standard is, while it is an ever-changing format, times like this are tough, right? You've got a deck that's dominating the field that people are planning for but aren't succeeding necessarily in beating. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't seem fun if you don't want to play that Marty Vehicles deck, which totally makes sense. Although, I will say, a deck that made another top 8 in a tournament, I'm not remembering which one it is, Standard tournament, it was a GP. It might have been the Atlanta Open, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, but was mono black aggro.
Right.
So with Amonkhet, we're getting people to try some new things. They ran Bone Picker, which is a fun little card. They ran some neat zombie things. I hold the opinion that there might be a zombie deck that makes a splash. Kevin doesn't think so.
No, I think it already made a splash at one point. There was a black-white zombie deck, and I do not remember who piloted the deck, but it did fairly well.
Okay.
My thought is, though, that it will be good, but not great.
It will not be Marty. And that goes back to kind of what I was saying about Lightning Bolt.
Yeah.
Marty was kind of the standard Lightning Bolt right now. It's the test. How well does it do against Marty vehicles? And that's really going to be the question until... actually, I don't think anything rotates out of Mardu in September. Because it's just Zendikar and it doesn't play anything for Zendikar.
I will say, though, with Amonkhet's release, there is some more sideboard tech against Mardu vehicles.
That's very true.
And I don't remember the name of the card, but it's X and a red. Mm-hmm. Destroy X target artifacts.
Yep.
There's also the ever-present card, Release the Gremlins.
I love that card.
Which is great.
For its flavor.
Yeah, the flavor's probably the best part, but it's so good.
Yeah, I love the picture of their artifacts blowing up and my little gremlins popping out.
Yeah.
Getting ready to make a mess. They're fantastic.
But, there are now cards, hopefully enough of them, that people will metagame for that. And I'm not saying shoot Mardu vehicles down, it's the worst deck in the world. It's a great deck. No. It's very good. I think it will be a present staple for Standard for a little while.
Definitely.
And, I'm not saying people shouldn't play it or anything like that. I'm just saying let's find a competitor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let's metagame for it enough that there's a competition.
And can we find a competitor that doesn't rely on an unlimited combo? Can we please? I think we are past the point in Standard where we need to include Splinter Twin and stuff.
I
think we've matured past that. We'll talk about some of those broken combos in the future.
Sure,
but Tolarian Academy is, back in those days.
But yeah, no, I agree. I think the Thaldar Guardian ban was fine. But I do think we do now need something up against Mardu vehicles, and we just haven't seen it yet. Not that's consistent enough against it that puts a run for its money.
And consistency really is the key here, especially in these big tournaments, because you're going to be seeing Mardu.
Absolutely,
a lot.
Yeah.
32%, by the way. It's not the majority, but of variances.
Yeah.
You'll see it a lot. So yeah, that's kind of where Standard is now. Things rotate, things change.
So to conclude, Vintage is better.
Vintage is better if you are a millionaire.
Okay, fair. No, as it's been stated, Standard is not my favorite, but I do appreciate Standard for what it is. I think it's a good format. I think with Amonkhet, there's going to be some really cool stuff coming into Standard that I'm really excited about. I do still prefer maybe Vintage a bit.
And that's fine.
But that's what we're here for. We want to be able to talk about everything from Vintage to Standard.
Our opinions, your opinions, our mistakes. You lovely listeners don't make mistakes. You're perfect. Come back, please. No, but really, we want to flesh out any option that someone talks about. And if it's silly, let's talk about why.
Yeah, let's make it happen. So, I think that sort of concludes our main content. I think now we go into our Cracker Pack, which we are still both on the search. It's been a couple episodes now. From the start, Will, you've been searching for what?
Neheb the Unworthy.
Neheb. Still no Neheb.
If I'm saying that wrong, someone shout at me.
And I am looking for an Avon Mind Sensor. I'd really like one. So we have our packs already open.
Yeah.
Will, what'd you get?
So I didn't get my guy. Bummer. I actually have already pulled a copy of this card, Liliana's Mastery. It is a 2 black, 3 colorless enchantment. It says, zombies you control get +1/+1. When Liliana's Mastery enters the battlefield, create 2 black zombie creature tokens. So,
a cool card.
It's neat. Like I said, with Zombie Tribal maybe making a splash, this might hit some GPs. My only concern is that it's kind of slow in a deck that wants to be aggressive. However, it plays off of the enter the battlefield ability. It buffs everybody.
Also
in
fair.
Your zombie deck.
Yeah.
It's also top end. So where in a zombie deck, you'll probably play a lot of things around 2 to 4 creatures in that mana area. This is a top end. You pop that down late game. It's not so bad.
Yeah.
You get 2 extra
pretty
guys
good.
that are 3/3s. 2 3/3s for 5 sounds pretty
Not to mention a buff to all the other zombies already.
Exactly.
A very cool card. I like it quite a lot.
Yeah. I don't like it quite as much as Kevin, but maybe that's because I'm salty. It's not a sexy minotaur with a giant axe.
A perfect description of Neheb. My pack is opened, and unfortunately, I also did not open my gold card, but I did get a pretty cool one. A Soulscar Mage. It is a 1/2 for 1 red. It has prowess. And if a source you control would deal non-combat damage to a creature an opponent controls, you put that many -1/-1 counters on that creature instead. So I kind of like this card.
Okay.
It sort of makes, your burn spells permanent on a creature, even if it doesn't kill it. And
now,
I like that.
This is also important to point out with that effect. So in this set, we have creatures with indestructible.
Sure.
Now, they do not die to combat damage. They don't die to burn. They die to exile, but not most removal.
Right.
You can counter them away. You can make a player sack them, but actually not in the set. I don't
know that there's much sacking. There's a few. But...
Yeah, but you'd have to reach for it to get him to sack that.
But this is a way to maybe get around that.
Because things with indestructible still die to -1/-1 counters.
They do.
Which is interesting, and I think a little bit crappy. But it happens, and I'm fine with that. You need to...
You can't make it too broken, right? Like, it is very cool. I actually happen to really enjoy this card. I think it's pretty good.
It's fine. It's a 1-drop, 1/2.
1-drop, 1/2 is pretty
Prowess
great
is
stats.
Sweet. There's plenty not to like about it, but it will get played, I think.
I think so. I'm happy with it. I like it quite a lot.
Well, cool. I'm happy for you.
Thank you. I'm a little salty it's not an Avon Mind Sensor, but we'll get there.
Join the club.
Maybe before you.
I've been there for 2 weeks now.
All right. So with that, I believe we are concluding what is now our 4th episode of It Resolves.
Yeah.
It's been fun so far. This is sort of our first week down, I believe.
Yeah.
And so, again, we will be sticking to the schedule as best we can from here on out.
Yes.
Streaming will be up on Twitch, so we do recommend, which all of this is in the description, so feel free to check that out. And with that, I think we will get out of here for today.
Yeah.
My name is Kevin.
My name's Will.
This is It Resolves. We thank you guys for watching.
Tap some mana, play some games. Good luck. Good luck. Good luck.